Welcome one, welcome all. It is the NFC East Mixtape. I've lost track of what volume number it is. You can listen to this show on any of the NFC East blog podcast networks at SB Nation. You can watch it on the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel, home for Philadelphia Eagles content, the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel, home for Dallas Cowboys content. He is Brandon Lee Gowton of BGN. I am RJ Ochoa of Blog of the Boys. It is Cowboys Eagles week, or as the little brothers in the rivalry call it, Dallas week. Brandon, happy Dallas week to you.
I mean, certainly not the little brothers in the standings, of course, because the Eagles are one win away.
The little brothers who now need special uniforms to
from
conjure up
clinching.
this magical energy.
Well, I mean, because the Cowboys have to wear their away uniforms at home because they just have
those
to
are
do
their
that.
home uniforms. Why are you? What are you talking about?
They're white. It's their road uniform.
Most teams had white home uniforms. At some point, they just transitioned, like all these other teams. The Cowboys are kind of sticking, with the OG thing here. We have a lot to get to. We have to.
This is episode number, by the
90?
way, 89.
Ooh, okay. It's a good year. It's the year I was born in. Nobody dox me, please. But so we have to tie a bow on week 15 and the brutal Dallas Cowboys loss. We did have an NFC East tilt in week 15, by the way. Sunday Night Football that was flexed into and all the way down to the wire. We have a big time injury to get to, obviously, in Jalen Hurts. We do have the Cowboys Eagles matchup to get to. We have the pending Washington and New York games. As of now, Brandon, as you well know and everybody knows, all four NFC East teams still in the playoff picture in the NFC, despite the fact that both Dallas and Washington lost. We will see if we think that is going to be the case as we move on. There are 3 weeks left in the regular season. We have 2 teams here that have clinched playoff berths and one that is basically a hard sneeze away from clinching the NFC East and the 1 seed in the conference as well. Anything else to kind of start before we really dive in here?
I just want to give a big shout out to my man, Doug Peterson, pulling off the upset, just like I called on the podcast last week.
If you call a Cowboys loss all the time, it is not an impressive call.
I don't do that every week.
No, but like that.
I didn't say they were going to lose to the Texans.
Maybe you didn't, but like a lot of people do that. People will be like, I called it. And it's like, finally, boom, I called it. So, you can't call it all the time.
Well, you're just gaslighting me because I did call it specifically on the podcast last week. And that was a bold pick in certain terms of, Cowboys are 4 point.
Bold pick.
They're 4-point favorites on the road.
Pick them in our SB Nation expert picks. Pete Sweeney was the only person who picked them.
The reason I didn't do that is because I made that pick, I think, before I came on the mixtape. Because sometimes I'll do my picks right on Tuesday and I forget to change them because sometimes I change my pick throughout the week. And I decided on the mixtape that canonically was my pick. And if you look at my picks against the spread, you will see I picked the Jaguars, which I published on Saturday mornings. Sunday mornings. So yeah. Anyway,
I have one
Cowboys
question.
Lost.
I have one question before we start. Well, we have to talk about the Eagles first, not the Cowboys.
Well, I'm saying it's a big deal because of what the Eagles face ahead of them now.
It is a big deal. So I have one question, one kind of mixtapey sort of question before we dive in all the way. By the way, on the subject of the mixtape, the plan, it's Christmas week. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everybody.
Also Hanukkah week, happy holidays.
That's true.
Yeah.
If you're traveling, whatever, and you're using the mixtape as some sort of travel piece, safe travels, happy travels to you and the family. But it is Christmas week, so please offer that understanding. Plus, it's Cowboys-Eagles week. Plus, there's a lot happening, playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. The plan for Brandon and I is to do a live show on Thursday night as Thursday Night Football starts. The aforementioned Dougie P's, Jacksonville Jaguars, and the New York Jets scoring off. We will be live for, I don't know, about like an hour maybe on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. We'll disseminate that as we always do everywhere, all the normal places. We will get the video up on the BGN side of things, but the software only allows us to stream on one YouTube channel. And so far, Eagles fans have not matched the subscriber count the Cowboys fans have over at the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. So my one thing, now that we kind of got all that out of the way, if you go to a restaurant, like, a popular restaurant, whatever, and you want to kind of test it out, see how good it is, like, what's your like measuring stick meal? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the meal you're like, well, they make a good whatever, so I can trust this place.
So you're something like a generic dish?
Yeah, like a generic thing, like not a super specific thing or like a particular like ethnicity or something.
Just for example, like I get the burger to see if it's a good place, and if it's a good burger, then I like it, and if it's not, is that like what you're asking? Just to understand the question.
Yeah, but that's your ultimate barometer as a burger, and I'm not knocking.
No,
I'm just asking.
I don't really think I have that. That's just not how I think about restaurants. I usually want to go somewhere for something special that they might do uniquely, not something a lot of places that do the same thing. So, yeah, I do a lot of research, RJ, before I go somewhere. I have to look at the Yelp reviews. I have to look at the shout out to, hey, how about this Eater? Are also a Vox Media property, eater.com. Obviously, they have really good maps and reviews and lists of different restaurants to go to, especially in various cities So usually I check all that out. I like to see pictures. You got to see pictures. There's this one place in Philly, RJ, called Royal Sushi, which is really good. And I love that they give you a menu when you go that shows you the pictures of what the food looks like. I think it's awesome. I think it's great.
That's cool.
It's very enticing. You're like, oh, that, like, because you'll see something on there and like, I don't really know what that is, or I'm not really familiar with that. And then you see the picture and like, that looks awesome. I have to get
Helps
it.
the
So,
waiters
yeah.
out too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
The waiters don't
exactly.
have to like try hard.
And
To
also you can
describe
just point to it if you can't say it. It's just
Right.
it's a no-brainer kind of move.
Respect. So you don't have that answer, I guess. My
No.
answer, this was we're recording on Tuesday. It's 3 p.m. Central Time, just for the purposes of any sort of news breaking. And it's been a really busy day for my wife and I. And on the way back, from someplace we had to be, we picked up Cheddar's. You ever been to Cheddar's before? It's
No.
like I think it's a national brand, or it might
I
be
don't
like
think
a
we
southern thing.
have that.
But it's similar to Chili's, but like a cooler version of Chili's.
I love Chili's.
Yeah, so better version of Chili's, I would say.
Not a sponsor.
And neither is Cheddar's. And it was quick, and I had a lot to do, so I had to get something that I could eat quickly once we got back to the house. Chicken tenders and fries. You can make a solid chicken tenders and fries meal. I feel like I can trust you. That was like where I was coming from.
I just got chicken tenders from another Philly spot called Red Crest Kitchen, RJ. They also do like a full service at night, but they do like fried chicken during the day. And I just had their tenders with our good mutual friend Holden, and
whose mind I live rent free in.
And it was really good. So I think when you get elite chicken tenders, I think it's great. It's a great time.
Good call. All right, so 25-20 was the final score for the Philadelphia Eagles against the Chicago Bears. The 13th win of the season for the Eagles. They maintained the league's best record in the NFL. They are one win away from clinching the NFC East and the number one seed in the NFC. I think there's some ties, right? Like if they tied and the Vikings tied.
I can run through that with you really quick. So if the Eagles, so first of all, let's take it to Vikings Giants, because that game's at 1:00 on Saturday. If the Vikings win that game, then the Eagles cannot get the number one seed by a tie. The Eagles could only clinch the NFC East with a tie, which
Gotcha.
I think it is worth. It's like obviously unlikely. I don't love ties, but it's worth mentioning because let's say it does get late into overtime and there's a scenario where the Eagles have the ball, like they should just stop trying to win. They should try to tie the game.
Raiders Chargers a year ago is the prime example of that. Right.
So the Eagles again, if the Eagles tie, they clinch the NFC East no matter what. They could get the number one seed by tying if the Vikings either lose or tie the Giants.
So if the Vikings win, the Eagles must win to not only clinch the NFC East, obviously, but clinch the number one seed this particular week. Okay, so the win on Sunday in Chicago was pivotal in that sense. Also pivotal with regards to the Dallas loss that we'll get to as well because of the Jalen Hurts injury. I know you've talked about that a million places already, but obviously it has to be touched on. My first question to kind of set you up. This all evolved, as everybody knows, because the line started to move with regards to Saturday's Cowboys Eagles game and Jalen's MVP odds. But was like, for me, there was no like hint of this? Was there any like hint or small indication after the Bears win that there could be anything wrong with Jalen?
So Jalen did have an interview post game with Pam Oliver, and she asked if like he was okay because he took a lot of hits, and he was like, "I'm gonna need to, listen to Anita Baker, I think, and drink some tea." I forget exactly what he said. But the point was like he didn't just be like, "Yeah, I'm good." So there was that, but like knowing Jalen, I just didn't really read a whole lot into it. I was like, okay, he's just making
a funny answer.
Yeah, it's like a throwaway kind of line. Right. I didn't. And then, but I didn't see this, but we talked about it on BGN Radio with Jimmy Kemsky. Jimmy had actually seen Jalen go into the X-ray room after the game. And he was kind of trying to work on that before putting it out there. So,
there was the first to report that he got the X-rays correct on Monday.
Yeah, he put that out. And then Schefter came out with the sprained shoulder. Sounds like he could miss 2 weeks, although you have Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts on Tuesday, which happened before we recorded this podcast, obviously, is that they're not ready to rule out Jalen Hurts. To me, that seems like gamesmanship. It sounds like Gardner Minshew is going to be the quarterback for week 16, although like I wouldn't say 0% chance Hurts plays. I think it's more likely than not that Minshew plays, but it sounds and that's how it should be because it's a sprained shoulder. You need to rest it.
It is the throwing shoulder.
It is the throwing shoulder. There was some confusion there. It is the throwing shoulder. And the way it gets better is you rest it. So it seems like a no-brainer for the Eagles, who just need to win one of their final 3 games to rest that and make sure he gets better.
Yeah, I mean, it was it's a kind of a funny thing, but like this really is the like thank you Doug Peterson for offering
Yeah,
this particular luxury of
huge.
time and rest. The people read a lot. I was talking to Dave Fucillo, our coworker at SB Nation, who no offense to you or anybody else, but knows betting lines and odds better than anybody else. That's literally his job here. But I was
No way
asking
it
him.
needed to be a shot at me, but okay.
Well, I was trying to say like not to say like you don't know lines or odds well.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like in saying that Fuch knows them better than everybody. I
I
just
mean, some would say I know them great because I am killing it in the locks
I'm
of the
just
week on the
saying
Look
that's
Ahead show
Fuch's job
for the
title. By
SB
the way,
Nation NFL show.
it was Fuch who crafted the tweet for me last week,
Mm,
based around Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa. But anyway, I was asking him for his opinion because like you can talk about this with
yeah.
anybody and everybody's gonna have a different opinion, like on the dramatic line movement and how many games that indicates Jalen could miss. Because obviously the week for this week's or excuse me, the line for this week's game is one thing, but his MVP odds being so impacted is another. And Fuch was like, yeah, dude, I mean, this suggests it's a multiple game thing. What is your gut instinct at this point?
Well, I mean, it should be a multiple game thing if they win this week. There's literally no reason to play him if the Eagles beat the Cowboys because then they will have wrapped everything up. And again, it's a shoulder sprain. Just rest him the rest of the regular season and then let him come back for the playoffs. So I think you have to look at it from that perspective too, that it could be a multiple week thing just because the Eagles have the luxury to make it a multiple week thing. I will say that if the Eagles lose against the Cowboys and it's like really bad, if they get blown out, let's say, then I think we might see Jalen Hurts come back for the Saints game. I think he tries to tough it out. But if it's like close, really, really close, then they might just ride with Gardner Minshew for another week and see if they can get it done. I think it kind of depends on how he plays.
I was trying to envision like all because there's so many like tentacles to this into this week's Cowboys Eagles game and the juice and energy, and we'll get to that that are and are not associated with it. But I was trying to envision like a close loss or like kind of like a whatever loss. I'll make this case in a moment, and you're already gonna laugh, but like I think it's better for both teams, and I say this in a funny way that the Cowboys win this game. Again, we'll get there. But I was thinking like, what if it's like a whatever game, right? Like a just haha, fine, we lost our second game of the season. And for whatever reason, they did lose without Hurts to the Saints next week. That would be, I think, the like, whoa, you know what I mean? And then if you ran into a Giants team that really needed that
Mhm.
week 18 game for whatever reason, depending on what happens to them between now and then, that is, I think, prior to the playoffs, the worst case scenario. Again,
Right.
there's a lot to go between now and then.
Yes. Losing their next two games is the worst case scenario leading up to week 18. You were
But
right.
it would also hurt the draft pick that you have talked about that is so coveted that belongs to the New
It would
Orleans
be,
Saints.
yes, which is also kind of so let me phrase it this way for you. Do you feel, and let me explain through it before, like, I'm going to ask the question, but then kind of talk through it a little bit. Like, does this kind of feel like a no win spot for the Cowboys? Because the context here being the Cowboys are virtually locked into the number 5 seed, right? At this point. So it's not
I
like
think
they
the
have,
better word is effectively because everybody's been coming around like they're not locked into
okay,
anything. So
effectively. Yeah,
right.
they're effectively very good chance they're going to be the number 5 seed in the playoff picture. And for the Eagles, if they win this game, then obviously that's the best case scenario. They clinch the number 1 seed. They clinch the NFC East. They'll be number one on the podcast all off season long until next year. We'll talk about them in the top slot, most importantly. And then there's just like the humiliation factor for the Cowboys. It's like you lost to the Eagles' backup quarterback in your own building on Christmas Eve for the Eagles to clinch all those things. Like that stings. That has to sting. And then the downside is if or the no win position from the Cowboys winning is like, okay, now it incentivizes the Eagles greatly to play their starters against the Saints to help make that pick worse, to also prove Micah Parsons wrong that it's not just the
Oh
system.
my
I
gosh.
mean, it would be a very bad look for him if the Eagles get destroyed and be like, oh, it's just the system, or is it the team, or is it
Wouldn't
Jalen
that
Hurts?
feed into his
Just
point
in
though?
how
If the Eagle look, to be clear,
it would
I don't
if
think
Eagles got
anybody I don't
destroyed,
think
it would
anybody
invalidate it.
should like make public statements like this that invite this like discourse. But if we're taking his statement literally, his point was that the Eagles team is so great, independent of Hurts. He didn't like trash Hurts. He was just saying the team is so great. So if the team absent of Hurts beat the Cowboys, wouldn't that
No,
feed his point?
No, but no, I shifted over to the Eagles lose scenario. I'm saying, let's say the Eagles got like
Oh,
destroyed, and then it's
um,
like,
I don't think
well,
that
then it's hard to say. It
that's
was
stupid.
just
Like, look,
it's the team.
it all ties into like the weirdness of this game. This is the one like look, this is supposed to be about the Eagles, but we kind of have to blend it with the Cowboys and the division and the conference as a whole. So I don't think this is like I would have taken so before the Hurts news, right? When the line opened, because the opening line was actually, I know when you wrote it and Dave wrote it at our site, it was 1.5 points, but it actually opened as just Dallas being favored by a single point. At that moment in time, pre-Hurts news, I thought that made sense, not in the sense that I think that Dallas should be a point favorite over Philly, but I kind of thought like, well, Philly's in a really weird spot, right? Like they have 3 chances to clinch all this stuff. Like it doesn't make sense for them to sell out, especially if you look at these next 3 games for the Eagles. The team they will most likely face in the divisional round of the 3 is Dallas, right? And so like, that's what I'm saying. Like it's a weird game. Hey, let me make my point. And so
I'm listening.
I do think that Dallas coming off their loss against Jacksonville, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how much you want to like get into the in-depthness of that game, but they need this more from like a pride standpoint, right? I think from a financial sense, not literally, but the Eagles need this more, right? Like the value of being the 1 seed trumps anything that the Cowboys could achieve by winning this game.
Right.
But the Cowboys need it more from like a pride, whatever standpoint. The Hurts news kind of twists the weirdness of this game. But I do think if you just let me flesh this point out. So it's possible, right, that Jalen doesn't return throughout the regular season, right? And obviously that is elevated the sooner that the Eagles clinch all of these things, right?
Jalen Hurts will play at the very there's no way he doesn't play in the regular season if he needs to. You know, like if it's a week 18 game and the Eagles need to win,
That's
there's
what
no
I'm
chance.
saying.
Yeah.
So like I think the most likely thing is Dallas wins this game because of the Minshew factor, because of the pride, because Dallas kind of wants to feel tall, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then Dallas, I think this is an important detail, plays. So if the Eagles did lose to the Cowboys, they can't clinch anything this week, right? They're still over a 99% likelihood to clinch all these things.
Right.
The Cowboys play next Thursday night in Tennessee. So they're the first game of week 17. They would technically have to win that game because like, oh, you never know what's going to happen. The Eagles could lose out. And then on Sunday, the Eagles would blast the Saints into oblivion, you know, elevate their first round draft pick and clinch all of their things. But, you know, like I do think like this was already something I was interested to ask about. Like if the Eagles did clinch, say on Saturday, like you're going 4 whole weeks, you're already at a place of like relatively consequent free football, right? Like we have this conversation every year with teams like when do you rest, when do you pull, whatever, and this is the best possible problem to have that the Eagles do have. But so if the Cowboys won, it keeps things a little bit more, you know, consequential, for lack of a better word, for the Eagles for 1 more week, especially when you tie in the Saints narrative.
Yeah, I don't buy the rust thing. Just like so, the Eagles, you know, everyone was questioning back in the training camp and the offseason. Oh, they're not playing their players in the preseason games, and there's a lot of rest in practice. How are they going to look? How are they going to be ready for week 1? And they start what? Will they start like 9-0, 10-0, whatever they started this year? 10-0, I think it was. I forget. Anyway, yeah. So I'm not really too worried about that. 9-0. I can't remember the record, but the point being, they've only lost 1 game all year. They're 13-1. I think that was fine. This organization has decided to lean on rest, and you've seen the results of that being pretty, for the most part, the roster stayed pretty healthy relative to other teams.
Sure.
So, you know, I will take that strategy. I think that's a strategy that you're good to bet on. And wait, hold on.
I agree with you is all I was going to say.
When the Eagles clinched back in 2004, because they did this in 2004 when they went to the Super Bowl, they were the 1 seed, and they clinched fairly early. They rested their starters for like the last game or 2. It was a couple weeks, I'm pretty sure. I think it was multiple
before
games.
The bye.
Yeah, before the bye, and it was fine. Like they looked great when they I think they played like the Falcons or the Vikings, whoever they played, they just like rolled easily. So I don't really buy this being like a big
no.
Like rust.
I'm not concerned, but like a question you like to ask a lot is like, what's the precedent for whatever? I think you could find a precedent for like rest being a good thing and a bad thing, right? Like shocker, in a league that is 100 years old, there's an example for just about every single cause.
Sure.
But my point is like, things stayed tighter, so to speak, with a Cowboys win in the most literal possible sense. Again, the Eagles are going to win this division. They're going to be the 1 seed in the NFC. And even if they somehow choked away this 1 seed, it would not be Dallas in all likelihood. It'd be either Minnesota or San Francisco who would take that. But to your point, my personal view is that it makes all the if I were Nick Sirianni, so I got my visor on my highlighter on my visor, I got my Phillies hoodie on because we lost the World Series. And I'm trying to figure this thing out. I think you've come this far. You can't risk Jalen on Saturday against the Cowboys. Doug helped you out, gave you a slight bump. You have to rest him this week, and in all likelihood, you rest him next week against a crappy Saints team at home in Philadelphia. I mean, it's worth mentioning, by the way, this could be, or if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, this is the last game that they are going to play not at home before the Super Bowl itself.
Correct. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And let's not act like Gardner Minshew's chopped liver over here. You know, like definitely, you would agree he's one of the better backups in the league, right? We had that conversation.
He's not Cooper Rush, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're right. The conversation back when the Eagles traded for him, that like that was a move that you wished kind of the Cowboys had made at the time. And when he played last year, looked pretty good. It was against the Jets, but still, like looked
He
pretty good
lost to
in
the
that game.
Cowboys. What are you talking about?
I mean, all right, come on. I'm talking about an actual game where like he had his starters to work with. Dallas Goedert had like one of the best games, arguably the best game of his
Who's
career.
returning this week, by
Who
the way,
is back for
activated
this
off of
week?
IR.
I think he really could have played in the Bears game. I think the Eagles intentionally gave him the extra week because they felt like they didn't have to have him for Chicago, because it seemed like he was trending in a good way to play last week, and then he didn't. So yeah, I think Minshew, and also there's something going on with Minshew right now that like as I saw the news today, kind of made me even more convinced that the Eagles are going to win with him, because there's the whole Mike Leach of it all, which is very sad that Mike Leach passed away. But he was speaking like. So last week in the locker room, Jeff McLean of the Inquirer talked to Minshew, and Minshew was, it was a very emotional time, and he broke down in tears talking about Mike Leach, who he didn't even like. It's not even like they were together forever, throughout his whole college career. So that kind of sticks out, like how profound of an impact that Mike Leach had on him. And he basically just said that, like, and I think I've seen this sentiment otherwhere, and maybe in your own life, where like sometimes you just need one person to believe in you, and then that like changes. That's like the lucky. It just changes everything. It turns everything around, and that's how Gardner felt. Like he felt like that changed so much for him, just like this one person who actually believed in him. So I don't know. I just feel like there's some positive, as my hat says, there's some kind of positive vibe there that like just makes me feel like, can't you just see it from? Can't you see this? Like Gardner Minshew, he comes in. He's going to be a free agent after this season. Mike Leach just passed away. This is his tribute to Mike Leach. This is his case to have a starting job somewhere next offseason with this big start in the signature win over the Cowboys. I just feel like I can see that scenario playing out.
I literally, as you're speaking now, I just saw a tweet from TMZ Sports. I'm sure you saw this.
Thank you for listening.
Well, no, I listened, but it's about Gardner. It says that he spoke. The tweet says Gardner Minshew spoke from the heart as he addressed the crowd at college football legend Mike Leach's memorial service on Tuesday. So that was today, the day we're recording this. But look, I mean, Gardner's a really fun story, and obviously, one of the more fun characters that the NFL has seen recently. Separate from everything that you said, which is noble and pure, I just don't know. I mean, like, and it's kind of an interesting case study. Like, that's what we talked about with the first Cowboys-Eagles game, right? Like, how good is the Cowboys team, to be able to kind of elevate the backup quarterback? You're right. Gardner's a better backup than most, but he's not Jalen Hurts. I mean, Jalen Hurts, no. If the season ended today, is the league MVP. And so, like, that
is Trayvon Diggs would say, yeah.
I mean, the Cowboys give you so much content at Bleeding Green Nation. So, I mean, I just think this doesn't seem like a game the Eagles win when you do the whole stew. It's possible, you're right. And like, I don't think it's embarrassing or whatever. This is a weird game because of the fact that the two teams are both already clinched. When was the last time that the NFL had a game between two teams who had already clinched playoff berths with 3 weeks to go in the regular season? Like that, you know what I mean? Like when does that ever happen?
in a division? Yeah.
Like, it just is very strange in that sense. Like, and so that in and of itself, the fact that the Cowboys lost, and I guess this is kind of our, sorry Bears, we didn't give you a ton of love. But the Cowboys lost to the Jaguars, and that really kind of set this up to not mean much, especially once the Giants beat the Commanders and cemented the playoff berth for Dallas. Had Washington won, then Dallas would really need this game because they would not technically have a playoff win yet, although any win would clinch it for them. And so the Cowboys have effectively cemented that they will not be the division winners. There was faint hope, but much more prominent hope than that currently is, at least a week ago. And so it's weird. It is strange because right now, if you had to pick all three wildcard games as they lay, would you not only pick Dallas to be the road winner? You wouldn't pick New York to beat San Francisco or Washington to beat even Minnesota?
I think Washington could beat Minnesota. Weren't they up on them earlier
this year?
Who would you pick?
I
mean, I think it's a coin flip game. I mean, I'd probably take the points, and maybe take the Vikings straight up, but I think it'd be a close game. I think it's a coin flip game.
I'd say most people would pick the two division winners and the Cowboys to win those 3 games. And so the fact that you're like, this seems likely, right? Nothing is likely. Nothing is guaranteed.
We're going to see a 3 match, you're saying?
Yeah, that seems like it seems likely enough that you have to guard against it, or you at least have to think about it. Nick Sirianni mentioned that today.
You don't guard against it. I think that's dumb because, again, first of all,
then you disagree with the mighty Nick Sirianni.
That's fine. I also disagree with him like overusing Quez Watkins like he did against the Bears and not running Miles Sanders until
I have one question here.
Finally agree with him
while we're talking about disagreeing with Nick. I've seen this take floating around because I checked out the comments on your Jalen Hurts news post at Bleeding Green Nation.
Oh my God, there's like 700 on there.
Well, and there's a lot of like doubting, like, how could you do this? How could you know? Why did you run Jalen Hurts 17 times? To that I say, back off, my guy Nick. Like this is how the Eagles have gotten here. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you can doubt this now. Like, it's super convenient and hindsight to doubt Nick Sirianni and to be like, well, you shouldn't have run him on the play he got hurt. Yeah, no crap. Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's be real.
There are like a lot of more than one thing can be true, as I like to say, and there are different what?
Go ahead.
There are different layers to that. I think it was clear that as the game was progressing, that these design runs weren't working. So yes, they probably should have gone away from them because it was clear that they were really not having too much success with them. So I do think there's some fairness to that. Obviously, Jalen Hurts isn't running 7 times. The Eagles telling him to run 17 times. There's some reads in there. He's checking in and out of plays sometimes. So, some of that is on him. And now, again, I think the coaching staff at some point can maybe dial back on that and not give him that option to run as much when it's clear he's not doing well with it. And also he's taking a lot of big hits. And also that the Eagles weren't running the ball enough in terms of running back carries. So, I think there's blame to go around on both sides. I didn't like the energy that I saw on Twitter after Jalen Hurts, the news came out. And it was like, Shane Steichen should be, crucified because like it's all his fault. It's like, not really. I mean, he was part of it. But what did you want to say?
I'm looking for it right now and I can't find it. It was a DM I got. I can't remember if it was on Instagram or Twitter. That's why I'm trying to find it. So my sincere apologies. I'm going to keep looking while Brandon is talking. But somebody messaged me specifically about how we like to say that multiple things can be true.
Yeah.
And they said that
more than one thing can be true.
But they said, like, in a world of infinite possibilities, that isn't really encompassing the point. So we should actually say opposing things can be true. That is, I think, more specific to the spirit of what we're trying to say.
But I don't agree because I think it's better. I think more than one thing can be true.
I found it. It was Jeffrey Clark on Twitter. So
they don't have to be opposing. They could be different things that aren't necessarily.
He said, literally speaking, an infinite number of things can be, quote, true. I think a more accurate way to communicate this idea is to say opposing things, ideas, perceptions, opinions, for example, can be true.
Yeah, but just because things are different doesn't mean they're opposing necessarily.
But that's the crux of what people get tripped over on. You know what I'm saying? They're like, well, A and B are the opposite, so A and B both can't be true. So I agree. I get that.
Well, not always. I still like how I say it, and it should be on a t-shirt. We should
anyway,
do a t-shirt.
Anyway, but you were saying you disagree with the idea that you have to guard against potentially seeing the team.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That's what I wanted to get back to. Thank you. Totally lost that. I mean, in part because if Gardner Minshew is playing, it's a different play. It's like a different playbook. It's not the same thing that's going to be happening in the playoffs with Jalen Hurts. It's different. It's absolutely going to be different. And also, I don't think, as I've said this to you before when we were talking about this potential scenario like weeks ago, looking down the road, was that I don't think what the Eagles do on offense is predicated a lot on like trickeration, if you will. Rest in peace, John Madden. I think it's about executing and like relying on their star players at a high level. So I don't think you need to like hide. Sure, there are certain wrinkles. Probably you don't throw the kitchen sink at it, but I don't think that's like the whole basis of the offense. And I don't think you tank the game by any means, or like go super basic and never do anything interesting because you're afraid. No, you can't do that.
Well,
you have
to
win the #1 seed. That should be the singular focus right now is win the 1 seed. So focus on that.
That wasn't what Nick said. So maybe another twist on the expression is like, not everything is literally true. You know what I mean? Like Nick didn't say like, dude, we're just going to like be vanilla. You know what I'm saying? Like he's, it is fair for him and for the Cowboys or for anyone in this position to say, you know what? Like we got to be a little bit careful. We have to consider this. That's responsible, forward-thinking, process. It's the same like idea behind sitting Hurts. Like this isn't about, yes, we have to secure these things, but this isn't about week 16 against the Cowboys. So I have one question. And I want to be very clear about this. This is not like a trolley sort of question. And I also want to be very clear to Cowboys fans. Do not be the Cowboys fan that's saying like, I don't want to hear Eagles fans complain if we win and they didn't have their quarterback because they didn't say anything. They said, no, you didn't have. Nah, dude, like this sucks. Like we have all been there. We have all had players on our team get hurt. Do not be that way. Just be cool. Let's all love one another, hate each other's teams, but let's be fair. Let's be rational. So my question in an absolutely non-trolling way is what level of energy has to be put into the idea of maybe Hurts doesn't return, right? Like that it's in a world of infinite possibilities. No. Right now, like if we knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that Hurts wasn't coming back, right, this would be all about like prepping Minshew for the playoffs, right? The way it was Foles 5 years ago. And so, like, what level of energy has to live in that world, right? Like, hey, dude, like, it's possible. It might be an infinitesimally small possibility, but it's possible that Hurts might not come back. So, yeah, we can't be vanilla with Minshew because we need to ramp him up and get ready for a hopeful postseason run.
I mean, I think the Eagles have been good for the most part about being a 1 week team, like they say. I don't. I don't know what your question is. I guess.
I mean, like, how much, how prominent of a thought is that on your mind? Is it like the smallest percentage possible?
My concern with Hurts, if anything, is that because teams, as you know, with the Cowboys and any team out there, not just the teams we cover, teams generally like to undersell injuries. They don't like to be like they don't like to embellish it. They don't be like, well, this could be a lot worse. No, they like to undersell it. I think because they get scared sometimes of like dampening down
Right.
expectations of the team and like it's just it's a buzzkill basically. They don't want to be a buzzkill. So I think teams tend to be like, and we've seen it on bigger scales with like Andrew Luck once upon a time where he's fine,
Mhm.
he's totally going to play, and then like just doesn't play for whatever how many weeks into a season or entire
And to your
season.
point, we've seen it with every team. Every team has
Yeah,
done it
every
or
team does it.
prolonged. Look, we talk every week about Chase Young, right? Like, oh,
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
1 week, he's coming
He's
back,
doing
whatever.
great.
Right.
There's like a game he missed a couple of weeks ago or a month ago now with like illness. Like, oh, he was getting ready. He just got sick, so he couldn't play. It's like he hasn't been okay. He got better, and now he's
Right.
still not playing. And I don't even know if he's going to play at all this year. Like I've kind of wondered about, and we'll get to those two teams in a bit. So that's I don't have anything to believe that's the case. I've not heard anything like that.
Just
Everything that is
general
being put out
general
there,
experience of watching football.
yes, just
Right.
maybe, but I'd see if it's a sprain, then that indicates that it should really only be ideally a multiple week thing that should be able to heal up with time. So again, the ideal scenario is that he gets that rest, he comes back in the playoffs and he's fine. Although you could say, well, maybe there's a bit of like a break. Maybe he's playing at such this high level and he's in there every week and he's getting the reps and and he's playing well and the game experience, and maybe he's a little bit slow or rusty out of the gate in the playoffs. But again, those are not like 9 out of 10 level concern things. Those are like three out
They
of ten.
just they exist in the world of
Right?
questions to ask. And I tweeted
Sure.
this and included this in our story BTB. If he did not play throughout the rest of the regular season for whatever reason, that would be 5 weeks between week 15 and the divisional round.
Hmm.
I'm with you totally in the sense of like teams like nobody freak out, nobody freak out. That's why the MVP odds were so interesting to me. But additionally, the thing that I always think is concerning is when the national NFL insiders are not only all regurgitate, like when it's like literally like copy paste, but whenever they are specific to say something like
Hmm.
that, it is not right. Like this is
Right.
not considered serious, whatever. So the fact that every
It's the
single
Wizard of Oz. Like, don't look behind the curtain. There's
right.
no.
So like every single national insider said this is not considered to be season ending. Who asked? Who said that? Who said it was? Like why are
No,
you
I
already
know. I get why there would be panic about that because it's that's what everyone wants to know. I don't totally agree with that. And you're up
well, okay,
against
like
the
again,
end of the
I'm not
season
saying
here.
that's like 100% flagrant, but you get what I'm saying. Like it's a symptom of like the thing we're talking about is all I'm saying.
Hmm. I would be more concerned if they're saying that like early in the season because there's just so much
Okay,
season left. But
so we kind
and
of
also,
have to
by the
like
way, last thing I'll say on Hertz is that there's a chance where or a scenario where the Eagles do lock it up this weekend, and maybe he plays like a drive or two at the start of Week 18 because maybe he's rested enough by then, and they want to make sure he's not just like super rusty for the playoffs. So there is that scenario as well. So I'm saying there might not be the 5 week layoff if the Eagles win this week.
By the way, like just as another example, because if somebody's like, well, Chase Young is one example. I just saw a tweet today on Tuesday that Lamar Jackson did not practice. That's another one, right? Where it's kind of felt like so this tweet actually says he has not suited up since he injured his knee. Do you remember when it was? It feels like longer ago. And I'm
No, but I
looking at the
remember
date.
he was supposed to be out like what 1 to 3 weeks is what the timeline was, and that's kind of what it's been so far.
So he got hurt on December 4th. So it's been
Yeah.
16 days.
Hmm.
But like to your point, like there was this initial like optimism, like or not optimism, but
I
cautioning
saw
that
1 to 3 the whole time.
well, still, like maybe that's not a great example, but like we do tend to hear like that verbiage, right? Like, oh no, it's just this, it's just whatever this and that, blah blah, and then it's just like, yeah, he's on IR. Done. Not that that's happening here, but like and again, there's precedent for every single thing in NFL history. Okay, let's take a quick break, and then we'll try to get through all of this. Welcome back.
Wow, we're back, and RJ is coming
hang on.
up
While
with
we were gone,
something for me to say.
we talked more about chicken tenders, and you told us your ideal dipping sauce specifically for chicken tenders. So not for other foods, specifically for chicken tenders. Ranch, ketchup, honey mustard.
I mean, I feel like we've kind of had this before because we did the McDonald's
but those are chicken nuggets. Very different.
I agree. Thing. Well, they're different, but I think I'm going to go with the same answer. I like a buffalo. I want to, I want that sweet.
But you want to dip it?
Well, not sweet.
Or you want them like, kind of, lathered in it, or do you want to dip?
Well, yeah, I think the ideal scenario is you would put it in like, some kind of bowl or a package or whatever and be able to shake it up and get it, covered.
And then would you dip that into like a ranch?
Well, yeah, if I'm, well, that's two different things at that point. If I'm doing that, yes, I would dip that. I mean, I know you don't like blue cheese. You're not a blue cheese guy.
No, that's stupid.
Holden also not a blue cheese guy.
Holden, I love you.
But I like both. I like having both options.
The answer is ranch, although every now and then honey mustard hits the spot. I don't like mustard in general, but honey mustard.
Agree. Not the biggest mustard guy, and I don't hate honey mustard. I think it's a change up, like in baseball.
Agreed.
Like a pitch.
Agreed.
Or like,
you mentioned sushi earlier. Like a spicy mustard can hit kind of nice too. But for whatever reason, regular standard plain mustard is stupid. Wow. So the Dallas Cowboys lost embarrassingly to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have never won in Jacksonville ever. They're 0-2.
You're going to bring up how they can do it again in 2030.
They lost 40-34. If you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, I got the score wrong on the graphic enough. I've heard it already. It was an accident. All right. It was a very chaotic
They lost
hour.
And you're in shambles.
They were up 27-10. Similarly, it was very similar to their other loss since Dak Prescott returned. They were up 14, or they blew a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter against Green Bay. In that game, Christian Watson went off for 3 touchdowns. Dallas lost in overtime, even after possessing the ball. In this game against Jacksonville, they blew a bigger lead, 17 points, granted not only in the fourth quarter. Zay Jones caught 3 touchdowns. He only had 2 on the season before this game. Dallas lost in overtime, even after possessing the ball. I do think a little bit of too much love was given to Trevor Lawrence, but that's a separate issue. We could talk about that on the look ahead, some qualms I had. But he was phenomenal for the most part in the second half, and Dallas just peed down their leg. I mean, they let this team back in, and there are some teams that you can let back in and then still squash, but there are some that are too talented and they will take that opportunity and beat you. And that's what happened here.
Well, from afar, it seems like those injuries are kind of piling up for Dallas. Anthony Brown goes out and then Jordan Lewis is out. Am I missing anyone else at cornerback there?
No. So I love Jordan Lewis. That injury has been mitigated a little bit by Deron Bland, Cowboys 5th-round draft pick, has been phenomenal. Had another interception in this game. Has really been kind of a darling. This year's rookie class for the Cowboys has been a lot of fun in that sense. So he's been fine as far as this team's nickel corner is concerned. But outside, opposite of Trayvon Diggs, it's a tough scene.
You got Nahshon Wright out there?
Well, only because Kelvin Joseph got benched. I mean, so Kelvin Joseph. Okay. Yeah. Kelvin Joseph, their 2nd-round pick a year ago, super questionable off the field. Obviously, even if you just limit it to football, a very awful.
Didn't want to play a game.
Right.
Nah, I'm good.
And everybody was so excited because he locked down Devontae Smith when he was at LSU and Devontae was at Alabama. I'm just telling you what the story, and that's actually a thing now because actually on Monday, Mike McCarthy or Dan Quinn, said that there would be an open competition for that. No, don't worry, we're just trying to figure out the other starting corner.
It's week 16 and we're having a training camp competition.
Now, because of the weirdness of them having clinched, they have a little bit of time to kind of figure things out. Obviously, they still have to improve and lock down their top wildcard spot when it ultimately does come to that. But if it's not going to be Kelvin Joseph, it's Nahshon Wright, who was Dan Quinn's guy. That was Dan Quinn's dude who he demanded in the 3rd round last year, who has been inactive a lot this season. So that secondary corner spot is really, really, really tough.
Yeah, so that's looking like a weakness. Cowboys' run defense hasn't been as good, right? Too. I mean, you lose. Hankins.
So Hankins went out last week. He's on IR, maybe back for the playoffs. But what really was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back was Leighton Vander Esch left this game early. Now people were worried and concerned that he had a neck injury. Obviously, that's been his thing since joining the NFL. Thankfully, not that any injury is good. It was only very loosely revealed to be a shoulder issue. So not similar to Jalen, but it's a shoulder. So he should be back for the playoffs. But Anthony Barr was just not someone they could rely on, and Doug Peterson picked on a little bit. To a lot of success.
27 for 129. I mean, and then the long was only 30 yards. It wasn't like this is like one, like 80-yard run or whatever. Like they were just consistently grinding it out. So that's certainly another concern from afar that I see. Another big one, I mean, you can be like, well, Dak Prescott didn't actually cost them a game because that interception bounced off of Noah Brown's hands.
Okay, you don't have to do this bit. Like that was on Noah Brown, but like that is a problem in and of itself. Like I love Noah Brown, and he's been awesome this season. He's played way above expectation. A lot of that is because the expectation was so low. No offense to Noah Brown, but Michael Gallup has not been very good this season. I mean, what a shocker. The dude coming off a torn ACL, isn't fully, totally himself. And trading away Amari Cooper, hey, what a shocker. Maybe not the best idea in the world. T.Y. Hilton, in case you didn't know, was inactive for this game. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is really playing at an incredible level, but it's him and some dudes. That's really all it is right now. And so, yeah, like everybody had a problem. I don't know what you saw of this, but so the Cowboys forced a fumble off Trevor Lawrence, excuse me, late in the game, that Micah recovered. All Dallas had to do, pick up a first down, and you win the game. And they, forced Jacksonville to burn their timeouts on first and second down. On third down, they went deep to Noah Brown. I have no problem throwing the ball. I have no problem not forcing them to call that third timeout, but like a go ball to Noah Brown, maybe not your highest percentage play in that moment, but you don't have anybody. That's the problem right now. It's CeeDee Lamb and nobody else really. Dalton Schultz hasn't played that well either.
Dak Prescott might not have been responsible. He was not responsible, whatever, for that interception on that play. But I mean, like I said a couple weeks ago, and which has been aging really well since, and maybe won't age well against the Eagles, we will see, is that it's not scaring me right now. And why should he be scaring anyone when he has thrown multiple interceptions?
You're living
in 4 out of his games this year.
in the extremes.
Hold on. He's thrown at least one pick in every game except 2 this year. There are only 2 quarterbacks in the NFL this season who have thrown more interceptions than Dak Prescott. Can you name who they are?
Have they started every game for their team? Or started a lot of games?
But yeah, that's the other thing. They've also, each of these quarterbacks has played in 3 more games than Dak Prescott.
Davis Mills.
Yep.
And
then someone who should be on the top of your radar, and we've talked about a lot, and
Justin
should
Herbert.
be on the top of your mind, because this is the team you hate the most, the biggest frauds in the NFL.
Oh, Matt Ryan.
Yeah, Matt Ryan and David. They are the only 2 players who have thrown more interceptions than Dak this year.
That's true. So I saw this from Ian Hartitz on Tuesday. I'm just reading his tweet specifically. 4 quarterbacks have a league-high 6 interceptions where the throw wasn't deemed to be a turnover-worthy play by PFF because the receiver messed up, and the defender made a spectacular play. Can you name these 4? So Dak is one of them. Can you name the other 3? I think you'd be surprised.
No.
So just to be clear, they have a league-high 6 interceptions. All 4 of these quarterbacks are tied again in what is deemed by PFF's measurement to not be a turnover-worthy play.
Okay.
Just give me a name.
Mahomes.
He's not on this list, but
Allen.
Davis Mills is.
Okay.
So Davis Mills. The other 2 are Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert.
Okay, your boys.
I mean, I love Joe Burrow, but
same.
I mean,
Joe Burrow is a quarterback who legitimately scares me.
But so
I'm not scared of Dak.
In my stock report for this game, I had a stock up. Actually, I originally had a stock up. Obviously, had to change that. I actually created a new category called volatile stock, and I put both Dak and Noah in this game because Noah Brown had 2 touchdowns, but before these last whoopsie daisies. And so, in the spirit of multiple things being true, this really was maybe the best that Dak has looked all season. The first interception was awful. Nobody can explain that away to me. It was really just a panic move by Dak, threw the ball away, and then the comeback started. And so the second one, obviously, nobody in their right mind is placing anything about the second one on Dak Prescott. But so it was this really great performance that has this really obvious dunce, cover on it. You know what I mean? For both Noah Brown and Dak Prescott. And so they're playing really well. It's just they have these bad moments that are as bad as humanly possible and at the worst possible moment.
Well, I'd also be curious to see, because you mentioned the metric so it's interceptions that weren't necessarily turnover-worthy plays, right?
It is defined as
but they're also
not being
turnover-worthy plays that don't turn into interceptions. And I feel and I've been saying since week 1, anecdotally, I felt like Dak had a decent amount of those. There was the one in the Colts game.
Well, if you measure them, we can talk about it. PFF measured these. So,
okay, do you have those up too?
No, because I'm not making up the thing I want data.
But the point being is I feel anecdotally at least, and I have to look at the evidence. To your point, it's fair, but I feel there've been a number of times this year where I've watched. I'm Dak got away with one there. Got away with one there. So my point being is that I think some of that evens out, and I think his interception total is kind of fair right now.
I disagree with that. I do agree.
Of course you do.
I do agree, and
I've
said this forever that he is playing more aggressive, and that is an extension of what Mike McCarthy wants to do. And you can argue that has burned them. And, you could argue that burned them going for it on third down, right? And being aggressive, this low percentage likelihood play to Noah Brown. But that aggression is, kind of like I talked about with Nick Sirianni, like, hey, running Jalen Hurts. I realize that's a broad statement, but like, that's what's gotten the Eagles here. That's who the Cowboys are. And so, like, I like Dak being aggressive. It sucks that like these weird moments have worked against him and the team as a whole. And it sucks that the Jaguars were a talented enough team to take advantage of it. And yeah, the Cowboys made their bed. I'm the same way I mentioned that Saturday is the last road game for the Eagles of the season, right? However it all shakes out. This is the last home game for the Cowboys, probably of the season, unless they make it to the NFC title game and a lower wild card also makes it, which is incredibly unlikely.
Right.
Did you have another point to that?
No,
or?
I mean, what I don't know. You didn't really throw me anything there.
We're super deep into this. This is going to be a little bit of a longer episode. We got to kind of like make our way through it. On the subject, I guess, of Saturday's game, I tweeted this out. I tagged you on Instagram as well. The last 6, counting this week and assuming Jalen Hurts doesn't play, the last 6 Cowboys-Eagles games, so this is back to the beginning of the 2020 season. These are the quarterbacks for the two teams. Ben DiNucci, Carson Wentz, yuck. Andy Dalton, Jalen Hurts, yuck. At the time, also Hurts was this like, what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't the Hurts that we know today. In 2021, the first one, we got Dak and Jalen Hurts, Monday Night Football, Cowboys blowout. Second one, I noted it was meaningless, and I got all these people that were like, quit trying to spin a narrative. I wasn't trying to spin a narrative. It was a meaningless game, but it was Dak Prescott and Gardner Minshew. Earlier this season, Cooper Rush, Jalen Hurts. Eagles blowout, kind of. This week, Dak Prescott, Gardner Minshew. This sucks. Like, this just really sucks. I mean, like, you've been saying it. Cowboys, Eagles, week 1. Enough. Quit screwing around. Quit playing with fire, NFL.
I mean, there's still the possibility of like a preseason injury, whatever, training camp, something ruining it. But I mean, I just feel like it'd be the best. And also I understand. I talked about this with Jimmy on BGN Radio earlier today, but I get why. Because people are going to be like, oh, well, they don't want to do it in week 1 because they know they're going to get great ratings week 1 anyway. And they don't want to waste, an Eagles-Cowboys game that they could have on Sunday Night Football in week 1. But it's just like, I don't know. Just do it, though, because like it's been 20-something years. We can do it more than, or we can do it at least once every quarter of a century. Like, that seems like a fair thing to do.
I listed the quarterbacks, but like, and so that's like the face to my point. But like, my actual point is these games aren't meaningful. Like they're meaningful in terms of what they literally mean to both of these teams, obviously in the standings and stuff. But like you're taking away like the quality of the game, with these freak injuries happening. And to be fair to the NFL, I guess, even if Jalen were not injured right now, this Saturday's game is a little bit juiceless just based on circumstance and the fact that both teams have clinched and everything that we talked about to this point.
We should mention here too, the Eagles injury report came out as we're recording here. Jalen Hurts. So the Eagles had a walkthrough, to be clear. They did not actually practice
on Tuesday.
But on Tuesday, sorry. Yeah, I'm on my Sunday schedule, thinking it's a Wednesday. But yes, Tuesday, and Jalen Hurts did not practice. He was listed as a DNP. Gardner Minshew also didn't because he was at the funeral for Mike, so he wasn't there. And then that's it as far as notable. I will say, actually, it is notable that Reed Blankenship returned because he was been starting at safety for the Eagles, so he was actually back in full. So that's actually a big development for them. But yeah, so Hurts did not practice. That just adds more credence to the idea he's probably not going to play this week.
Right. I mean, what would you say it was? Like, as of the moment of the report, like what? 3% likelihood that he would play. So like maybe now it's 2%.
Single digits, right. Single digit.
See, like, and the other thing, and we didn't mention this, and not to go back, but like this is the story of the NFC East, and this is the story of the NFL right now. So the national reports that I touched on were like, hey, if he, and I'm not trying to mock the situation, but like if he had to play, he could. And I do think there's something to that, right? Like I think if the Eagles had lost last week and the Cowboys had won, like maybe it is worth like, doing everything you can, right? But it was it was the Philly Inquirer, right? That was the first report that it was probably going to be 2 games.
Yes. He said it said could be 2 games.
But that was the first place that 2 games emerged as a measurable point, is my
correct
point.
Agree. Yes.
So like anytime there's this like, weird, like not unit. Like I don't know. It's just it's such an interesting storyline. It's obviously unfortunate, and that's the most important thing. But
yeah, I'm sure you're torn up.
I am torn up. Look, Jalen Hurts is not one of these players who like is seems like a jerk. By all measurements, he seems like such a wonderful person.
Even his biggest hater can't say that. Like that would be just off base.
And I hate this as a Cowboys fan, but it is so cool when if you're like Philly through and through the way you are, the way Hurts has like embraced the city, embraced the culture, embraced the other teams within the city. He's like at Sixers games and doesn't want to root for his Astros. Like that is I've said this for years about Dak, and it is true of Jalen. He is a dream of a player to be the quarterback for your favorite team. It is very unfortunate. But okay, I think we've said all we need to say about this game or these two teams. Quickly,
I want to see if the Cowboys injury report comes out. I'm going to be monitoring that. Unless, do you guys have any big injuries? I guess you do with Van Der Esch.
Well, I would bet a lot.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep an eye on that while we're talking here, and I'll let you know if
I would just let you know. It's now 4:00, 4:03 Central Time. It will probably be like another hour. So,
okay. Well, there we go.
So you know. Okay. So we'll tie a bow on Sunday Night Football quickly. First of all, Terry McLaurin, don't complain. This is silly. Like, dude, this.
I'm going to complain. He screwed me out of my anytime touchdown prop that I had for him.
I love Terry McLaurin. We love Terry. We're very, very, very notable Terry McLaurin lovers. Dude, you cannot be complaining like this. And I'm on record about this. When Jalen Tolbert complained about the same thing when the Cowboys lost to the Packers.
I remember that. Yeah.
It was such loser energy. Like, well, the official. No, don't break the rule. Don't like that. That's on you, Terry McLaurin, not the official.
Also, kind of hard to believe, like fully that the ref.
That's what I said about Jalen.
It was just Thank you. Like, and just because everyone on Twitter said that just because the ref made a certain motion doesn't mean it was that. Like it was good. It was a thumbs up. It could have been like, hey, nobody is closer.
Nobody is ever going to be like, well, I'll give the benefit of the doubt to the official over the player, right?
So, I think it's a tough look. It is a little unfortunate to me that such a call would ruin like a play that literally has nothing to do with, but whatever. It's the rule. I get it. I'm not arguing against it. And also hey, Commanders, you were 4.5-point favorites. You should have been able to beat the Giants, who I think this is a lock. Commanders have this. They had a bye. They had 3 weeks to prepare. There was no good.
They had the ability to self-scout or not even self-scout.
Yes.
Like they played this team twice in a row.
They should have not left it to where it should have been coming down to the end of the game like that. They should never have been in that position. That is totally on them. They have to. This is both, more than one thing can be true. This is both a very bad loss for the Commanders and a very impressive win for the Giants.
This is the best win of the season for the Giants.
Yep.
That's what I came here to say. And I'm very confident that we have said his name maybe 5 times, which is appropriate given the jersey number that he wears. Holy crap, Kayvon Thibodeau. Like, I'm not worried about Kayvon Thibodeau this season. Obviously, the Cowboys have already swept the Giants, whatever. And, they're if the Cowboys go far in the playoffs, they probably won't face the Giants or anything. He's the real deal. Like, he's going to be a superstar. Like, he's a superstar. Some of that's like the team he plays for, the division, blah, blah. He is going to be a problem in this division.
Yeah, I mean, this was a huge game to kind of flash here, and certainly something you're encouraged about for the long term after.
And he almost had the same like kind of moment on Heineke 2 weeks ago, right? The ball that Heineke did not fumble, he almost delivered the exclamation point in both of these games.
Yeah, so that's it's a big positive going forward, and that's the thing. I think Giants fans know that, although there's always especially for them, the possibility they can go on some insane run, them more than any other team, improbably. That it's all about building for next year and enjoying what you can this year and making the most of it. Sure. But there is some house money element to, them being in the playoffs, assuming they seal the deal and make it there. But yeah, again, really impressive. Daniel Jones is working with nothing. Like those receivers he has, it's just nothing. And I think we saw the limitations of Taylor Heineke in this game. He's a nice story, whatever, a nice backup to have, but he's just not like in a gotta have it game.
The clock always strikes midnight on this kind of story, right?
Turned into a pumpkin, getting that strip. Getting stripped like that, and the Giants touchdown was huge. So no blue shoes.
You could just feel too like they were waiting for the story to keep going. Like when he hit Jahan Dotson big late. And by the way, Jahan Dotson, what a rookie class for the NFC East. By the way, like we don't talk a lot about Philly's rookies because there's so many other good players. But
they're not playing at all.
Well, but like on the whole is my point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like a huge rookie class. So Jahan Dotson, like big catch, but like the way Heineke was like. I'm not like making fun, but like the way he was like celebrating, you could tell it was like like waiting for the story magic to keep going. I thought the Giants social team had a phenomenal tweet after this. Did you see this?
No.
They did the like, you know, when people like win the like, I don't know if it's a lottery or the contest like in the app to win Jordans or to like buy them. You know what I mean? When they like are chosen, they like did that screenshot with some Washington colored Jordans. It was really, really funny. So I hadn't totally realized this as we kind of spin forward now. Of the 7 teams that are currently in the NFC playoff picture, 6 of them are playing one another this week. So you've got Cowboys and Eagles playing each other. You've got the Vikings, who are currently the 2 seed, hosting the Giants. And you've got the 49ers, who are currently the 3 seed, hosting the Commanders. Even though the Vikings would currently play the Commanders and the Niners would currently play the Giants. But that's really interesting that it just kind of worked out that way for this week.
It is, and we were saying for a while that it looked like that Commanders-Niners game was going to be big because they're battling it out for a wild card spot, certainly, and that didn't age well from the standpoint of the Niners have just really taken off and arguably look like, you know, well, I think not even arguably. I think they are the second.
If you had told us though at that moment that at this week they would not have Jimmy Garoppolo or Deebo Samuel, we would be like, oh, then like lock it up, like the Commanders are winning that game.
And that's a credit to them. You know, they faced a lot of adversity and they've battled through it. And you know, I'm not a biggest Kyle Shanahan guy, but I mean, hey, he's getting more out of less, and I have to give him credit for that. I guess, but we don't think the Commanders are going to make the playoffs, do we? Because they're probably going to lose this game.
So we think they're losing to San Francisco, right?
Yeah, which is a big deal.
We think the Giants are probably losing to Minnesota.
I think the Giants could win. I don't know. That's a coin flip for me. I don't know. You could go either way.
It's always going to be a coin flip for you against the Vikings. Like, I mean, like,
but it is. They just They just almost had like such a pathetic loss. It's like, come on.
I could not believe the screenshot I sent you and Stats and Steven earlier about the Colts. Like, oh my gosh.
All right. Again, we'll get into that on Friday.
There is something to like, oh, they came back from 33 points. Yeah, they were also losing 33-0.
Let's look at the line for that. They did not cover, by the way.
You can look that up. So, because I'm looking up
thought was such a lock.
I'm looking up the NFC playoff picture. So you look up the line, please.
The Giants are 3.5 point underdogs on the road.
And the Commanders.
And the Commanders,
all these are according to our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook.
Yeah,
okay,
DraftKings Sportsbook 7-point underdogs on the road.
If this goes chalk, both teams lose. I think the Giants are in over the Commanders, right? Like if we have to pick one, not necessarily like the team we believe in, but like based on the current playoff field, it's the Giants, right? Like they're getting in over Washington.
Yeah, they have the tiebreaker now.
So I think we both think the Seahawks are done. Like talk about the clock strike at midnight. Dude, and they're at Arrowhead this week, and they barely beat the Chiefs. like you know, it's we can kind of set down.
They barely beat the Chiefs. What did you mean? The Rams?
I'm sorry, the Texans. The Chiefs barely beat the Texans.
Yeah, okay.
Gotcha. So you could see like, and especially not to like do this, but like Mahomes now has the like inner what's the word I'm looking for here? The
I don't know.
Inside track. He has the inside track for MVP. Okay. So like he needs like more ammunition for MVP with Jalen missing. So like you could see the Chiefs just rolling over the Seahawks. The only other team who's a real factor here, I think at this point, is the Detroit Lions. And I
think they're gonna make it.
So our friend Jeremy Reisman at Pride of Detroit does a great job. Go check them out. They are facing the Detroit Lions this week, the Carolina Panthers. So hard to see them dropping. What's the line on that game? Detroit 3-3, I think I saw.
I closed my tab for that, but I will pull it back up. But I will say the Commanders are very fortunate. They did tie that first game because the Commanders have a head-to-head loss against the Lions. So if it came down to that, like they would be in a bad spot there.
Brian Dable just helped everybody out, dude.
He did. He helped the Commanders out. I'm going to look up that line, but yeah, I think the Lions end up making it. So then they're going
to knock Washington out. The Lions. I think
they're gonna knock Washington. It just honestly, from again, I'm all about the vibes. From a vibes perspective, it just feels like the Lions are going to make the playoffs. Like they're a scary team right now. They look great. It would be very surprising to me if they just fell out of it all of a sudden. And I think the Commanders, this is a terrible vibes loss for them. The vibes went like way down, and then now they're playing the 49ers, and they could just get crushed in that game. Like
the 49ers, who are in line along with the Vikings for the 1 seed, based on, technically speaking, based on this Hurts news, right? It opens doors and conversations for everybody, right? Like, hey, you never know, blah, blah, blah. So like, and everybody has something to play for. And the fact that you have these 3 games with 6 playoff teams, means the cascading implications are all over the place.
Lions are 3-point favorites, by the
I was
way,
right.
on the road in
So,
Carolina.
like,
And
this,
so
go ahead.
I want to talk about Ron Rivera, because I think he's done certainly better than you would have thought he did at a certain point this
Sure.
season when it looked like they were left for dead. But like, I don't know, man, losing that game was pretty tough, and there were some coaching decisions for sure to blame in that. And I just think it's kind of like Washington's at a weird spot because you have the whole ownership going on too, and sometimes when a new ownership comes in, like they want their own head coach. Like they have because they have their own vision. They have their own vision for what they want for this franchise. And not to say they can necessarily get him, although if you have, let's say, Jeff Bezos, just for example, as your owner, then you have more than enough money to probably convince Sean Payton to come to your team. So, I just think that's something to watch out for. Not to say that I don't think Rivera will be fired from a merit perspective, even if the Commanders fall out. But sometimes owners get emotional, like we saw again with Jim Irsay last year. So you never know. And again, the whole pending ownership thing is another reason to think he might not be back.
I don't want to accuse Ron Rivera of laying down either, but like, is the Washington job, if you're Ron Rivera, something that you're like really going to fight for? You know what I mean? Especially like you've been through everything with this team that he has. If they're like, dude, I don't know, we're thinking like, if you're Ron Rivera, aren't you kind of like, fine, like,
Well, yeah, it's not like he's going to quit, but there could be a point where there's like a mutual parting of ways or
right?
whatever. Because
That's what I'm saying.
especially if he feels like he can maybe, I don't know, and in theory, maybe there's another opening that he feels like he could pop over to. Like, let's say, I don't know. I don't.
Indianapolis,
Yeah, let's say
Denver,
in
whatever.
theory,
Yeah.
like he could, because Doug Marrone did that back once upon a time. He moved,
Right.
he like opted out of his contract with the Bills because he could get because he knew there was a new ownership group coming in, so that's relevant here.
Right.
And he ended up going down to coach the Jags.
So as we kind of zoom out and look at the NFC as a whole, we call ourselves the NFC Mixtape, which people do all the time on accident. We think the Lions, we think the 3 wild cards are going to be Dallas, New York, Detroit.
Yes.
Okay.
In that order, yes.
Right. Okay. Now, who do you think?
Although, wait. So I was going to say that because the Lions have the tiebreaker over the Giants, but it doesn't matter because the Giants are
right.
the tie.
The only other contender here would be the Packers, but I don't care what Monday Night Football's telling us. Like, they're done.
Again, the Lions, I think, if I'm not mistaken, did the Lions play them again this season?
They do. They are at Lambeau Field in Week 18.
Yeah, because the Lions currently have the tiebreaker over them. So yeah, I can't say 0% chance for the Packers yet, and they do. So who do the Packers play? You said
they play the Dolphins this week. The Green Bay Packers
in Miami too, and then they get the Vikings.
That's one of the 3 Christmas Day games. Most, in case anyone doesn't know, most games taking place on Saturday this week on Christmas Eve. We have 3 games, one at every slot on Christmas Day.
I think the Packers I think they lose at least one of their next 3. So
at Miami, Minnesota, Detroit.
I think they lose at least one of those. Yeah.
It would really change the narrative that we've all known this whole season if they not only steamrolled, but if they went and beat the Vikings and the Lions to get into the playoffs.
It's not again, I'm not going to say there's a 0% chance of that.
Well, that takes me into my last question for you, because the only reason you can say I'm not ruling it out is because it's Aaron Rodgers, right?
Sure.
Because of who he is, you cannot say that. So in a similar way, some people are like, oh, Cowboys, dude, you're gonna wax the Bucks in the wild card round. Hold up, I'm
the team, the quarterback they've never beaten ever.
Even if that weren't true, you know what I mean? Even if the Cowboys, as opposed to being 0-6 against Tom Brady, were 6-0. No, but even if that weren't, that's what I'm saying. Even if the standings were flipped, if they were undefeated against him, he's Tom Brady. I don't care if you're 100-0 against him. He is Tom Brady. So you're right. The record only worsens the feel and worsens the vibe. Who do you think is going to win the NFC South right now? Because that has become our main focus. Is I know the Hurts thing, and there are technical possibilities, but the overwhelming likelihood is Dallas will visit this division's winner in the wild card round.
I actually posed this question to Blogging the Boys' own Dave Halpern for our Q&A exchange. That'll
Everyone read bleedinggreennation.com.
Yeah, Bleeding Green Nation this week, and then obviously Blogging the Boys for my answers to the Cowboys questions. And then also RJ and I will be doing the 3 reasons why we think. So I will write 3 reasons why I think the Eagles will lose this game. I'll send that to RJ. He'll post that on Blogging the Boys. And then RJ will send 3 reasons why he thinks the Cowboys will lose, and we'll post that on Bleeding Green Nation. So, we get to see kind of what we're concerned about on each side of the matchup. But anyway, the NFC South thing. So I asked him to rank the teams for me. He hasn't gotten back to me yet, which is fine. So I don't know his answer. I was going to ask you, what is your order? I think the Bucks will win that division. But what do you think? If you have to rank the teams from who you most want to play in that first round to the least you want to play, who would you rank it? How would you rank it?
So I have 3 answers, if that's okay.
No,
but they all make different sense.
I need 4. I need every team listed from most desirable to least desirable.
I know, but like they all have different reasonings. So like the game
Just give me 4.
the game I'm most confident in Dallas winning is against Atlanta. They stink.
Okay, so that's your number 1.
They
You
stink
put
out loud.
the
But
Falcons at the top.
that's the least possible though. So like the game,
I don't care about possible. I want to hear
but
just
like
order.
that the context for Cowboys fans who are listening is
I don't want to
important.
hear possible. I want to hear
they
order.
they do. So
no, they don't. I want to hear
the most possible answer that I would like would be the Panthers. Like they're the closest ones to dethroning the Bucks. I would much prefer that. I would like the Saints, although I fear the Saints more than I do the Panthers, but I would like the Saints because it would significantly damage the first round pick that the Eagles are going to have from them if they won the division.
But I don't want to get into that angle.
So
I just want to know who you don't want to play.
The answer is Falcons, Panthers, Saints, Bucks. But
Falcons, Panthers, Saints, Bucks. Yeah, I think that's the right answer.
The only reason I would want the Bucks would be the only reason I would want to play the Eagles in a playoff game is like if you win, right? Like, you know, like it would be, and especially if Brady retires, it'd be cool. Like, I think the Eagles have the coolest trump card ever over Tom Brady to be like, you had your heroic performance in the Super Bowl and we beat you, right? Like that's an awesome thing to like have as a sports fan forever. It would be cool.
Last team to beat him in the Super Bowl, right?
Right. And so, and if Tom Brady does like officially retire after losing in the playoffs to the Cowboys, you know, a fun trolley thing is like, oh, Tom Brady's last game ever was a loss to the Cowboys. That would be cool. So that's the only reason I would want
you know, Tony Romo's last game ever was a loss to the Eagles.
That is technical. No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it was a loss to the Packers.
All right. Well, all right. Sorry. His last regular season game last game that he played in. Let me correct myself. Last game that Tony Romo played in was a loss to the Eagles.
You're adding more qualifiers than I would be at this point.
I mean, that's just true. That is objectively true.
So yeah. In a logical sense, I think the Cowboys would win, right? Like the Cowboys seem to be there are only 2 teams in the NFC with a worse point differential than the Bucks. Do you know who they
are? In the NFC?
In the NFC.
The Vikings. No,
I'm sorry, 3. There are 3.
I don't know. The Falcons. No. You said the division. Okay. I can't.
Yeah, they have the worst point differential in the division. Bears are 1.
Who's at the bottom of the NFC? The Rams, and
that's
then
2.
I don't know who else.
The Cardinals.
Okay, yeah. Sorry.
So
I was trying to find my power rankings.
Right. In all likelihood, the Cowboys beat the Bucks. Like, you know what I mean, in a world void of emotion. But I would be very, very nervous because it is Tom Brady.
I mean, yeah, it's a road game in the playoff. Like, you know, it's not necessarily an easy environment to play. Not that like Tampa's like, you know, a juggernaut or the one of the.
They have that big pirate ship, Brandon. I don't know.
They do have the cannonball, but you know, it's just not like it's uneasy. There's no easy scenario. It's the playoffs. The games are typically pretty tough. And
you never know if that defense wakes up and gets right. You know what I mean? Like,
or like players are like, hey, this is for Tom. This is for Tom's last game. You're like, we want to go out strong. Like, I don't really think that's likely because I don't think the vibes are great there. But yeah, it could happen. And I will say maybe I would consider flipping. I think the Falcons are correct as the team you would most want to play because they're just epic losers. Even if like the Cowboys got down to them, what are the chances that the Falcons are going to blow that lead? Like infinite chances that they're going to blow that lead. I think the Panthers could be the second toughest team, but it's hard to say. I mean, it's close. I think the Saints and them are close.
What separates the Saints and Panthers for me is like, name me the player on the Panthers that you're like, oh crap, you know, what
DJ Moore,
you know,
I guess.
But like we're sitting here, we talked about how the Cowboys' run defense is kind of like falling apart. I like Alvin Kamara. You know what I mean? Like, couldn't you see him having like a 263-yard game or something like that wins it? Like that. Yeah. That's what worries me.
I think it's close. My point is, you could argue it. I think you could flip flop Saints. I think the Falcons are correct at the top, most preferable, and I think the Bucks are correct at the bottom, least preferable. I think you could flip Saints. I think those teams are closer together, Saints and Falcons. Saints and Panthers, and I do think the Panthers potentially might have the better coaching.
Okay, so let's pick these games for this week. Do you want to pick against the spread or straight up?
Well, I guess we'll do both. Why not?
I mean, it's a weird week. That's why I asked, because every game that these teams are playing in has at least one team who has clinched a playoff berth. You know what I'm saying? So there's some like weird, and both the Giants and Commanders are. What order are you talking about?
In order of time. The time
chronological order.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so the Giants visit the Vikings on Saturday at noon, and the Vikings.
Because your answer to this impacts like what the Eagles might be able to do in terms of what we think could happen. Yeah,
the Vikings are laying 3.5 points, so you can pick spread. You can couch your answer however you want to do this.
I'm going to take the Giants with the points and outright, just because I think it's such an emotional win that the Vikings came off of. There could be a potential letdown here. And I just don't think the Vikings are that good. I don't think the Giants are amazing either, but the Giants impressed me on Sunday night. So I'm going to give them some benefit of the doubt here. and say they at least cover, and I'll just take him outright.
I'm gonna take the Vikings. I recognize they had
Yeah.
a really poor first half against the Colts, but I mean that they had such an explosion on offense in the second half. They had 2 defensive touchdowns taken away from them. I mean, you know, like, and that's not like
I think one of those was a
okay.
little iffy.
They had at least one taken, and
Sure, fair.
the first thing, you know, the Kirk Cousins pick 6 shouldn't have happened. Like, you don't have to move a lot of you don't have to unfairly or irrationally move goalposts to really change the score.
It was a legit pick 6.
No, but it shouldn't have happened based off the turnover that the Vikings should have had. If you know what I'm saying, if not for like the sequence of events. So they like the score does not like do justice to how badly the Vikings truly beat the Colts. Anyway, so I will take the Vikings. I will lay the points. So we're on different sides there. Both, you know, whatever. Then
so you have it so the Eagles have to win then, and I have it so that the Eagles can tie.
Right, because there is no tie. Yeah. I'm not predicting a tie. So right.
Agreed. No, we're not predicting ties. That's no.
And the Commanders are, as we said, getting 7 points on Saturday at 3:00, 20 minutes before 3:05, 20 minutes before this game kicks off.
Eagles
against
Cowboys.
the Niners.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Niners. I mean, that defense is so good. Like they can
cover.
They can, yes, because they can prevent points. They're very good at doing that. And that was a really like concerning loss for the Commanders. So I'm going to take the 49ers.
I'm so tempted to take the Commanders to cover, but like their
offense is like their offense is held together by like duct tape and like, you know, like they really piece it together on offense though. And
do you know if
tough against the 49ers?
Do you know if the Seahawks covered last week against the Niners?
No, I don't think they did. No, they didn't.
But they came close, right? Like they had like a kind of cute little narrowing in the fourth quarter. I don't think Washington's
not really.
I don't think Washington can do that. So I'll take the Niners. I'll lay the points. I'm really not that worried about it. Which takes us to Saturday afternoon, 3:25. The only game happening at that. There's only actually 2 afternoon games on Saturday. The one we just talked about, San Francisco, Washington, which takes place 20 minutes before, or starts 20 minutes before.
Right.
And then Philly visiting Dallas, 3:25 p.m. Central Time. So this line, as I understand it, opened Dallas by 1, then moved to 1.5, then 3, then 5, then 6.
I saw
now
6.
As I look at now it's 4.5 at this moment.
Ooh, interesting. Give me the Eagles outright, baby. Like I don't even need the points, but I mean I'll take them if I'm getting them. I think there's something to the vibes of this team and Minshew. And again, Minshew played well last year. He's definitely not as good as Jalen Hurts. And I think you have to say that. You have to credit Jalen Hurts. But I do think, to Micah Parsons' point, that Jalen Hurts does have a good support system in addition to being really good and incredibly valuable. And
so you agree with what Micah Parsons said about Jalen Hurts?
I do not, because I think he did not give Jalen Hurts enough credit. I'm saying
you agree
more
or disagree?
Than one thing can be true. Well, I'm saying more than one thing can be true.
Opposing things can be true.
I would say that the Eagles win this game. We get the vibes going on with the Leach factor and everything. I think this is going to be emotional for Minshew. He's going to go out. Again, there's a lot of motivation for him to play well in terms of like boosting his profile ahead of free agency this offseason. So, I mean, I think it's at least going to be a game. So I just think it's a little bit much to give the Cowboys all those points there to give the
all those points, 4.5
points. That's a lot of points for a divisional game for that 1 seed on the line. Christmas Eve, it's a big game. I do think, look, it's a tough spot in that the Eagles are playing their third
you act like Christmas Eve it affects the Cowboys. Like it's only something that affects the Cowboys.
No, I don't.
Anyway, I will take the Cowboys. I will lay the points because it's Gardner Minshew. That's not like a knock on him, but like also because this game is like void of like the Cowboys.
This is my lock of the week for the SB Nation.
Okay.
I'm locking Eagles 4.5 in right now.
So you're locking it now. So
I'm 9. By the way, I am. I think what now? 10. No, I'm 10-5 in my locks against the
Eagles will definitely play harder now that they know you're 10-5 against. I'm
in 1-0 in my locks of the week with the Eagles against the Cowboys. Specifically.
All I'm saying is, like if this moves, I'll give it to you at 4.5. Even if it shrunk, I'll give it to you at this point. So just so
that's what I just said. I'm locking
I'll have
right
your
now.
back with stats because stats might be like, no, dude, it's 3 now. No, like I'll have your back. Is what I'm saying. I could see this being a close game. And I'm not trying to throw out a bunch of answers here, but I could also see it being like a big Cowboys win, and then like you being like the Cowboys acted like this was their Super Bowl, blah blah blah. You know, like I don't think a loss here is like detrimental or devastating or even kind of sad for either of these teams. It's just a game that has to happen along the way, and I think that similarly to how I don't think the score did the Vikings do justice last week. Not that I think the Vikings are amazing. The Cowboys lost. They deserved the loss. They blew that lead. They still had a 17-point lead. They played very, very, very good football for the first, like, I don't know, 35 minutes of that game. I mean, they are that team more than they are any other team. And so I think they will pounce on Gardner Minshew, so to speak. And I think that they will win this one comfortably and kind of make themselves feel right. And that will make for all sorts of annoying.
Last week. You were like, they're not. You did. You were like, they're going to come. I read your prediction. I'm like,
they did. They were up 27-10, and then they
lost
down their leg.
I know, but like the game,
they did. Like they showed. Like we people treat like wins and losses like, well, they're just a terrible team now. No, like they lost, but they looked very, very, very good. That's a stupid truth, but it's the truth. So I think the Cowboys win. I think Gardner Minshew is a fine quarterback, but he is a backup quarterback, and I think I'm very interested to see Micah Parsons in this game. Micah had a really big game that was, he had 1 sack, but he had 12 pressures according to PFF. I mean, I'm very interested to see him in this game, especially against the Eagles offensive line.
Especially, and not even just the line, but the system. Because last game they played, right? I mean, it's true though. They schemed him out.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about his.
No,
his
sorry. I didn't even know that's a Freudian slip. I didn't even mean that. I'm just saying in terms of, I think the Eagles did a really good job of last time of like just not even blocking him at all. They took him out of the game by like optioning him.
You can only do that when you have Jalen Hurts. So I'm very interested. That's what I'm saying. It's a really interesting game, but like I'm not going to draw a hard conclusion about either the Cowboys or Eagles one way or another after this game. Is my point. So, and if this goes the way we're saying, this week would actually improve Dallas's odds of a 1 seed if the Cowboys win. Sorry, if the Vikings lose, because they would get just to be fully clear. And I say this for Cowboys fans because I've seen some misconception here.
To be clear,
no, I'm not. But like, if you want to know what they need, the Cowboys need to win out, and they need the Eagles to lose out, and they need a Vikings loss, which Brandon just guaranteed, and a 49ers loss, which we did not guarantee. If all of those things happen, infinitesimally small odds, Dallas would be the 1 seed, but not happening. So. But if this goes the way I'm suggesting, Dallas plays the Titans next Thursday night. Technically, with that life alive, I think we both would probably pick them against Tennessee. And then Philly can just end it all with a Sunday win against New Orleans, help their draft pick, and lock everything in for a meaningless Week 18 game that would actually then help the Giants and Commanders both out in their own individual ways because they play the Cowboys and Eagles.
I think we probably in Philly haven't given enough attention to what you just said about the Thursday game because the Eagles will know then, right, by Sunday. So even if they lose,
I said that
the Cowboys,
at the beginning of this episode,
right? But I'm saying
long.
like I know, but I'm saying like I'm just coming to grips with that. I don't think we've really talked about that enough in Philly about like how that could impact. But although I do think the Cowboys will beat the Titans, so
to your point, Philly could lose on Saturday. But if Minnesota lost, like you're saying to the Giants. Then Dallas lost on Thursday, it's over for Philly. You know what I'm saying? Like they would clinch by virtue of the Minnesota and Dallas losses. You get what I'm saying?
Huh? No.
So like even if the Eagles lose this week to the Cowboys, if the Vikings lose to the Giants, and then the Cowboys lose to the Titans, Philly clinches.
Yes. Yeah. And then all right, no, we're good. I'm not even getting into it. But the last thing I will say about the Eagles Cowboys matchup, your boy Nick Sirianni. RJ is undefeated. He is 10-0 when the Eagles do not wear white pants and they're wearing black pants on Saturday.
This.
It's true. I mean, it's true. They're 10-0 when they don't wear the white pants and they're wearing all black with their black helmet, which I think just really does not really look too different at all from their midnight green helmet. But whatever.
Okay.
It is funny that they're wearing an alternate on the road. That's the first time they've ever done that because usually they're wearing it at home.
Because that could only happen against the Cowboys because the Cowboys are white at home.
So the Cowboys wear their road games at home.
All right.
They're scared to wear their blue uniforms at home for some reason.
As we leave, not 3 words. Tell us your favorite reindeer and why.
Well, Comet and Dasher and Donner and I don't know, and Blitzen, Comet and Comet
and Cupid and someone
and Donner and Blitzen, Vixen. But do you recall the most famous reindeer of all? My most famous, I mean, come on, how's it not going to be Rudolph?
Hopefully we see you all Thursday night.